Less stress, more time, more money. Welcome to the Cash Flow Contractor interview.
What's up, Cash Flow Contractors? Khalil here. We've got another great episode for you that will help you find less stress, more time, and more money. And more money very clearly. Have you ever had a project go south with one of your customers? Not necessarily that the job went south, but the payment went south. That's one of the worst positions to be in as a contractor. Yes, you can file the lien, but if you didn't do it ahead of time with the pre-lien notice, or you didn't do it within 30 days of the job, you might be out of luck. Plus, with maybe a residential job and the homeowner, you file the lien, but it doesn't really impact them unless they're trying to sell their house. So what can you do? Well, this is a great episode on how you can take action for as little as $99 and actually have an impact and be closer to getting paid on that job. And if not, causing a little bit of distress for that homeowner who's not paying you. So this is with the credit app. We talked with Doug for about 40 minutes or so, and it's a great episode where we talk about the ins and outs of how to use the credit app, the impact of it, and what the other alternatives are to the credit app. So I hope that you like it. It will be pretty actionable for you. And if you know any contractors that are in a situation with a residential homeowner or anybody for that matter that's not getting paid, reference this episode to them, share it with them, and talk to them about their credit app. I hope that you enjoy this episode. We had a lot of fun talking to Doug, and enjoy. Martin, you just bought a building, right? With your wife?
Yep.
How was that process?
Actually, it was really, really good. Pretty clear. There's a lot to it, but we had the information and had good credit, which made that part really easy. So, yeah.
Well, good. Yeah, credit is a huge part of that, and we've got our guest on today from the credit app. Excited if contractors haven't heard about this, because I think it's going to be a big tool for their business that they can use in different scenarios. Hopefully they never have to use it, but we all know that things don't always go right with customers. So I had never known that this existed until Vlad, a roofing guy in Oklahoma, let me know that, hey, you should get the credit app on your podcast. They do some really cool stuff and actually make an impact. So yeah, excited to have Doug on the podcast from the credit app. How are you doing, Doug?
Pretty good. Good morning, guys. Good to be on.
Yeah, good to have you. Thanks for joining us. I was trying to figure out how to reach out to you, and I'm sure that a lot of homeowners probably have this issue, but it was very difficult. I honestly, I didn't know your name until you showed up this morning, because I couldn't find a number. It was only support at the credit app, but I mean, you answered right away.
.org.
Yeah. No, .com. It was.
No, it's .org.
It's .org.
.org.
Yeah.
Creditapp.org.
Yeah.
.org. Yeah, I was trying to find who should I reach out to, and I just emailed support, and that was you. And that's intentional, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. That's intentional, because if we had a phone number, I mean, people would. Well, what we require, I can get into the process in detail later, but we require physical evidence from the contractor to base what their claim is on. We don't just take their word for it. But then the debtors, after we contact them, they will get on the website and they'll try and reach out to us. And if we had a phone number, we would have to hire a full-time staff just to talk on the phone. But the response is always going to be the same. It's going to be, hey, what you say doesn't really count for a whole lot. We'll listen to you, but what we're going to need is some photos, some documents, some thorough explanation of why this isn't owed or how this is paid off. And in order to do that, we're going to need documents, and we're going to need it in writing. So it would just be a massive waste of time on our end and for the debtors.
Yeah. Very interesting. So let's go ahead and share the concept a little bit of the credit app. I'll let you give a little bit of spiel, and we can go into the process later. But what is the credit app?
Yeah, the credit app is just an online application for small business owners to where they can report non-payments and defaults from their customers, just like the big banks. So whenever you don't pay your credit card bill, whenever you don't pay your car loan, it goes on your credit report, and it just And it's out there just so mainly that the community and other business owners and lenders can know how reliable you are at paying your bills. And so you pay your credit card bill, you pay your car bill, and if you don't, it goes on your credit. So that's a big motivation for people to pay. But until the credit app came along, it was incredibly difficult for small business owners to report credit data. Now, technically, all small business owners are allowed to report their credit data to the bureaus. The problem is that it's insanely difficult to get set up. It's incredibly hard to get a contract with the credit bureaus, and you have to have minimums of normally about 50 to 200, depending on which bureau it is, per month that you have to report for them to use you as a data furnisher. So unless you're Sears
Gotcha.
or you're just really bad at writing contracts, it's going to be hard to get to 50 defaults a month. So that's where we came into place,
Yeah.
and we can gather all of that data via our application, and then we report it on behalf of all the contractors at the end of the month, just like big companies do.
Yeah. Sort of an aggregator where you get the minimums from a lot of different sources.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's great. How long have you been doing this, Doug?
We started in 2017. So yeah, I guess
Okay.
coming up on 5 years.
That's awesome. Love that. So, I'd love to get a little bit of background though, because obviously you had to come up with this idea probably from some experience. So,
Unfortunately.
what is your background? How did you get started before the credit app?
Well, really, my background is in insurance restoration and roofing. I graduated college. I was backpacking South America aimlessly. A friend of mine called me, said he was selling roofs and making $1,000 a week, and
Wow.
I thought that was more money than I could comprehend at the time. And so I came back to the United States and I started selling roofs door to door. If you live in Oklahoma City or anywhere in the South, you've probably had quite a few door knockers from roofing companies knock on your door. And so I was one of those guys, and I did that for a few months, and decided that instead of doing 80% of the work and making 20% of the money, I wanted to be doing 20% of the work and making 80% of the money. So I started my own company in Louisiana. I didn't want to. I grew up in Memphis, and I did the respectable thing, and I left town instead of competing against my former boss. It's a bit of a dick move to stay around in the same town and compete against the guy that taught you the business. And so we did that for a few years. And honestly, whenever I started the company in Louisiana, I just thought that it was a matter of calling Experian when someone didn't pay you and just being like, hey, this guy's not paying. And it was not that easy whatsoever. And the collection process became difficult, and it's one of those things where it's something that only happens 1 or 2% of the time, but it takes up a massive amount of time and effort. It's like one person not paying can end up taking me hours and hours trying to collect this, and then you got to negotiate, and you hardly get the full amount. And so I'm looking at my options, and the debt collector, they want 30% of what they collect. The attorneys want 30% plus some upfront money. I could file a lien, but I mean, I could pay $300 or $400 for an attorney to do that, or I could do it myself, but I still would have to pay to get it notarized. I'd have to look up the legal address. It would take hours. I had to physically take it down to the courthouse to file it. And, the liens weren't very effective unless they're trying to sell their house. In
Right.
some states, you can foreclose on a lien, but it is incredibly difficult to talk a judge into foreclosing on someone's house. I don't,
Yeah, it's really meant for like the business to business more so.
yes.
For the liens, right? Like it is for the homeowners, but it works better on the business side.
Correct. So yeah, I just thought it was something that someone could do, and so eventually I just kept looking into it and researching it, and I started it for myself personally. I was like, man, I want to be able to report credit data, and maybe I can get some other business people in that I know to combine their data, and then we can report it at the same time. And it just snowballed and grew from there. And then we built out an online website, thecreditapp.org. And for a flat fee of $99, you can report a default from someone that hasn't paid. And we have to send out all of the notifications required by law. Obviously, we send out the text, a letter, an email as well. and they have 2 to 6 weeks in order to pay, depending on where they are in our credit cycle that we receive the account. And if they don't pay from there, it just goes on the report, and it's up to them. We can't
Sure.
guarantee that they're going to pay because of that, but that's a lot of motivation for them to pay.
Right.
Absolutely.
This is brilliant. I'm thinking we need to get him in front of ASA, Khalil.
Yeah, absolutely.
You want to come
the
up
American
and speak?
Subcontract Association.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I think it might be helpful for people to understand what the. I mean, I think everyone understands. Martin, you probably understand with your building that you just purchased the importance of your credit score. But let's say that I am that roofer and the client isn't paying, and I go through the credit app, we hit their credit report. What's the actual impact going to be to their credit score? I mean, maybe you can't say the exact number it's going to take, but what's going to be the impact of their credit score, and how is that going to impact them in their daily life?
So we can't see their credit score without them signing some paperwork, which they would never do.
Sure.
But we do hear anecdotal evidence of what they say, how much it drops
Yeah.
when they email us. And it depends mainly from how I understand it on how
Gotcha.
thick their credit file is. So if they're 22 years old and they have one credit card with a $500 limit, it is
Right.
going to absolutely destroy their credit score. It's going to drop probably 150 points. But if they're in their 40s or 50s, they've had a couple mortgages, they've had great credit for years, then it might only drop it by about 50 points to maybe
Sure.
80 points or something. Um, so it really depends on that credit history, and they're going to compare that as a percentage. It's one default compared to what though? If it's one default compared to two, you have a 50% default rate, and you're not reliable. But if it's one default compared to 100 or 500, then it's not as
Sure.
statistically. It's more of an anomaly.
Yeah. But what is the impact of, let's just even say like an average of 75 points. What is that going to do to the homeowner typically? Where are they going to see the impact of that in their life?
Well, it depends on where how far it pushes them down. If they have a 725 credit score and it drops it down to a 650, that's going to be pretty close to the difference between getting a mortgage and not being able to get a mortgage.
Wow.
And getting a car loan and not being able to get a car loan, or the difference between getting a 3% interest rate on your car loan versus a 9 or a 10%
Which is
interest rate.
huge.
Yeah, it's very motivating.
Yeah.
Now, some people, and what I tell contractors all the time is, it just depends on how big it is, if they and how much their credit score is worth to them. Because if they have if they owe you $200, and I mean, most people would say that their credit score is worth a lot more than $200,
Yeah.
and they're going to pay it even if they feel they don't owe it. I would at least.
Sure.
But if you're talking about someone defaulted on $75,000, they might not think their credit score is worth $75,000, and that might be something that's not they might be willing to trade their credit score for $75,000 and say, hey, you know what? I'll rent for the next 5 years. I'll buy a car cash with the
Right.
75,000 that I have now,
Yeah.
and so that's up to them. And for the long run, it's not going to go well for your life probably, but.
Doug, you alluded to the fact that I can't just call up and wreck somebody's score. What generally is required to be sufficient evidence to report failure
So
to pay?
what we require is a signed contract that was defaulted on, and
Okay.
you have to upload this signed contract whenever you create a new account on the credit app. So, and that's what I was getting at earlier with the debtors. Whenever they call in, when the contractor, we do not take anyone's word for anything. So the contractor has to upload, and we keep it on file on our server, that contract that was defaulted on. And so we have that as evidence, like, hey, this is a legitimate thing that would, if I go to court, I can show them this contract, and a judge will believe that this was defaulted on. And so whenever the debtor, if they wish to dispute the debt, then we require some sort of evidence that it's not owed. So they can send us, I mean, and that happens occasionally. We had recently a homeowner in Jackson, Mississippi. where they had 4 or 5 leaks in their roof. They owed the contractor 5,000 maybe, and normally withholding $5,000 if it's a small little leak, that's kind of ridiculous. Maybe withhold $500 until they come back and fix a little leak. But this was several leaks, and it was a waterfall coming into their roof, and they sent me videos of it, and I was like, absolutely, this is not owed whatsoever. I mean, it's going to take $5,000 just to fix this, and that is not something we can report. So that we require that proof of evidence on both sides, because I have to think what we constantly worry about is our liability as a data furnisher. And if we report information that is not accurate, then we can get sued for that, essentially. So every single thing that we report, we have to say, if I was standing in front of a judge right now, this has to be a slam dunk. Like, there can be no possible way that this money is not owed. So we have a very high standard for what we report. But just emailing in and saying, I don't owe it, what is a judge going to say to that is what I always have to ask myself, and they're going to laugh. So, we have to put ourselves in that situation.
So are these all, are these human reviewed?
On the contractor side, or
The quality of the contract and the quality, well, both sides.
so on the contractor
The
side,
quality of the contract that's submitted?
it's required that we see the upload, but we're not reading every single contract that's submitted. We're kind of taking it at face value, because all of the notifications are sent out to the debtor, and it informs them clearly, like, if you wish to dispute this, this is how you do it. So they're receiving a letter, an email, a text saying, if you wish to dispute this, you can email the support at thecreditapp.org and submit your documents, and that is human reviewed. Every single dispute is human reviewed, and we're checking to make sure that the information that we're reporting is accurate.
Yeah. Something that you mentioned we are huge on, especially for the small contractors out there. You mentioned that you have to upload a contract, and it's always surprising how many contractors won't have the contract. I'm sure you've had people try to submit something to you as a contractor without a contract, but then you said it needs to be a slam dunk in front of the judge, and so many of these contracts are just taken off of a template or written themselves, and they don't include things that are mentioned, like, for example, we fix leaks, or if there's a leak, we'll cover it, or whatever. And so it's so important that if you're going to have success in these situations as a contractor, you have to make sure that your contract is clear, that it's reviewed by an attorney, and that it works, and that it's going to be that slam dunk, so that you can go through processes like this and cover yourself.
Absolutely. And that's an issue that we run into sometimes, where contractors will just upload an invoice and say, like, hey, this is owed. And there's a lot of plumbing companies and electrical companies that operate that way, and it's more of a phone conversation. Hey, we charge $185 an hour, and we'll accept that. But if they dispute it with anything whatsoever, we're gonna have to overturn it, because we don't have that is not something that we can confidently say is for sure 100% this is owed. Because it's just an invoice. I don't know whether or not they agreed to it, they didn't sign, and so that's a legitimate thing too. And also unlicensed contractors. If you're an unlicensed contractor in a lot of states now, the homeowner legally does not have to pay you, and that's the thing that I'm hearing out in California right now, where these homeowners, they'll intentionally hire unlicensed contractors to do their kitchen remodel or whatever, and then they just won't pay them, and they have zero legal recourse in California.
That's crazy.
And they just get a brand new kitchen, and there's nothing. If the contractor came to me, I would say, hey, that's the law. That's
crazy.
There's nothing I can do about
That's gonna ruin
that.
some people's lives, I can imagine. Just going in debt, buying materials so that you can complete the job and all this stuff, and then not getting paid. Man, so you've been doing this for 5 years. What are, you mentioned these residential plumbers, electricians, maybe doing these $200 jobs and using the credit app. What are some of the, grander scopes that you've worked on through the credit app?
Yeah, so I think we've done contracts up to, I want to say our
Okay.
largest default was about
Yeah.
125,000. So that's pretty big. The largest recovery we've received was, I believe I said this a couple weeks ago. I believe it was 42,000, and that was for a job in Texas, and that was a community effort. They leaned them. They used our service. I believe
Hmm.
they had an attorney send out some letters. So that was a big recovery. But our average default is
Wow.
about seven
And
thousand
so,
dollars.
Okay.
yeah,
Pretty good
pretty good
return
return.
on 99.
Yes, yes. So our average collection rate over the course of 1 year. Now this will stay on the credit report for up to 7 years, but our average collection rate is about 1 in 7 in the first year. So I mean, the way that I look at it, I'm kind of an investment guy, a
Yeah.
businessman, and so I look at it
Yeah.
is our
700.
average default is 7,000. If the average collection time in the first year is 1 in 7, you're looking at spending $700
Right.
and recovering 7,000 is how I look at it. So it's a numbers game. Like I said, we can't guarantee we're going to get the payment for you. We're just a tool that you can use to quickly and easily leverage this default. And so yeah, it's up to the individual debt. You know, some guys, if you're only owed $100, it's probably not worth it. But I mean, absolutely, if you're owed a few thousand, I mean, it's definitely a good investment to use the credit app.
Just in passing, I want to bring this up. You say they upload an invoice. Do you ever see invoices with some kind of legal language at the bottom? You know, this either comes for acknowledge this is done and agree to pay, and then they're signing. That's not a full-blown contract, but they could have their invoices printed
Yeah,
that
yeah,
way.
that's something that
Would
yeah,
that be a
that I
benefit?
see that, and I mean having that signature on there is definitely better, but it just depends on the homeowner. Like if the homeowner is is just saying like, oh yeah, well I just don't owe it, then we're gonna go off of that invoice because that's the most amount of evidence that we're seeing. But if they come back and they say,
Right.
hey, this is not a licensed contractor, hey, I never signed a contract. If they just say, hey, I never signed a contract to agree to this, it's I mean, it's each situation is a little different, but if the homeowner is, sneaky and they know how to get out of things and they understand the law, I mean, it's really they can back us into a corner and get out of some of that debt.
So if it's 2 weeks
A
you give
minimum
them,
of two
right?
weeks.
The customer, minimum of 2 to 6 weeks, you said. If it gets resolved, how long does it take to come off?
So if we haven't reported it yet, then it will never go on there at all. And if we have reported it, then the next upload cycle, which would be the first of every month, then we would update that data. And then from there, if it's a hard pull, they'll be able to see it pretty immediately. But if they're using something like Credit Karma or some other app, then it'll probably take a month or two to pick up on the third-party apps.
To come off?
Gotcha. So let's walk through the process really quick. I'm working on this job. Homeowner's not paying me. It's been 2 months, 3 months. I'm ready. There's no signs of them paying. They're not. They're ignoring me. I come to the credit app. What do I do?
Yeah, you just create an account, creditapp.org, and you just set up a new account, and you just have to click a bunch of buttons, a bunch of waivers, and then from there, after you have your account set up, it's kind of like buying something on Amazon. You just
Yeah.
click on a new debtor form, and you fill out the debtor's information. Don't put your personal information in there. The debtor is the person that owes you money. It actually happens about once a week or so. They're like, hey man, I accidentally put my own email and my own address on there, and can you change it? Yeah, we can change it. Don't worry about it. But I mean, like I said, we don't review all of that stuff. We kind of put that burden on you guys to make sure that you're filling out the correct information and not your personal information.
Right.
But
Yeah.
then you fill out that information, and we have to include the default date, the debtor's address. The more information you can know about them, the better. There are requirements. Obviously, we have to know their name, their address, email, phone number, um, and then the default date, the amount that was defaulted on, and then you upload the contract and you do a online signature at the bottom saying this information is legitimate. and you place the order, and then it goes through our automated system of notifications, and then depending, they can dispute it, or they can pay it off, or it goes on their credit.
And the default date, I think I saw, is 30 days.
Correct. You have to wait
past
30
due.
days past the due date in order to upload it, and we can only go back 2 years for defaulted credit.
Okay, and then the other thing, you guys don't handle any money, right? I mean, you handle the $99, but the debtor's not paying you, and you're not taking a cut
Not
of
at
it
all.
or any of
Nope,
that.
it goes straight through. Occasionally, they'll email us trying to settle, and we just say, hey,
Yeah.
contact the contractor, and it all goes through them. And then we have to verify with the contractor when it's paid so that we can update their credit information. So sometimes they'll email us and say, hey, this debt is paid, and obviously we have to confirm that with the contractor to make sure that it's actually paid, or the contractor can let us know. But just make sure to inform us at our support email that the debt is paid so that we can have accurate information.
Excellent. You said the average collection is 7,000. What is the average time to collect?
It depends. It's all over the place. It depends on the debtor. Like I said, it stays on there for up to 7 years. So we don't have 7 years worth of data yet because we haven't been in business that long. But we do keep track of the first year, how quickly that can get paid. But we definitely have debtors that email in from 2 or 3 years ago and clean up their credit score. Because they might not need it. They might not need it for another 2 or 3 years, and then they want to buy a house and they need credit.
Yep.
I can actually see some contractor listeners being reluctant to do this. Do you ever find? I guess by the time they contact you, they're not reluctant
Yeah.
to do it anymore. And I mean, just because they don't want to I know it doesn't make sense, but I see
Yeah.
it. Don't want to create a trouble and get sued.
Yeah, I've definitely come across people that view it that way, and I've talked to people before that view it almost like a bad thing, like, oh, you're harming people, and maybe they couldn't pay it because they were sick or something like that, and I don't think no one's ever approached us saying that they were sick or anything like that. I mean, we would probably do something, consider it in some way, delay reporting it for a month or two or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, there's only that's something we would have to be in communication with the contractor about, or the business owner. But yeah, some people kind of view it in a negative light, and the way that I view it is, this person stole from this person, and this isn't even a punishment. This is just informing the community, like, hey, this person stole from me. They did not pay me. I went over there and I labored and I spent tons of money and I did the right thing, and they chose to screw me over. And so it's just, hey, like, we're just letting everyone else in the community know, like, this is a legitimate possibility, that if you want to do business with this person, fine. If you want to give this person a mortgage, fine. But just to let you know, like, sometimes they don't pay their bills, and that's really all it is. It's just information, and then people can base decisions on that information. So, and I think the more accurate information we have about people, I mean, the smoother business is going to be done.
Right. Yeah, and you're protecting the next contractor potentially
I tend
from
to-
having to go through that process, or
Yeah.
anybody else in the community, like you said.
Yeah.
I tend to take the contractor's side on this. Even if they only owed me $200, if they were just thumbing their nose at me, it might be worth
Yeah.
$100 just to get it reported. But your unlicensed contractor, Khalil, my client in New York, that happened to him. There was a county line that went down the middle of a street, and the house was on the wrong side of the cul-de-sac, and he did $55,000 worth of work. And they said, we're not paying you. You're not licensed in this county. And that's been some years ago. but
Wow.
That was that
So
was
it was just a mistake.
And well, yeah. I mean, he literally did not. I don't know how many licensing's not that big a deal in Oklahoma, well, except for the trades, but who's going to check to see that the county line runs down the middle of this residential street with a cul-de-sac on the end, and the house happens to be on the left side of the line instead of the right? But the homeowner knew it, planned it, did it. It was 100% intentional.
Wow.
And
That's dirty.
see you later, buddy.
Yeah, it is dirty.
Yeah.
What are some of the bigger cases that you've, or like interesting situations, like story-wise, and then maybe it was immediate, like, oh my gosh, like I'm going to pay this now?
Yeah, one of the best stories that I like is we had a lady. This was just a couple months ago in Waco, Texas, I believe, who she owned a dog walking company, and small time. I think it was just her. I don't even think she employed anyone. Just had a small time dog walking company that she did, and there was a heart surgeon that owed her $800
Wow.
in dog walking fees and hadn't paid for months. And this lady had been in business, I think she said like 15 years or something. And she said, this has never happened to me in 15 years. And this heart surgeon is shorting me $800 that he owes me. And she said, I had no idea what to do. I didn't know whether or not I should call an attorney or what action I should take. And she just randomly came across our website and she used it. And 3 days later,
That's so
she had a
crazy.
check in the mail. And
Is she still walking dogs for that guy?
I don't think so, but it's just,
Yeah.
it's leverage. It's leveling the playing field. It's making
Yeah.
it so that, these small time business owners and service providers can have that exact same type of power and leverage that Walmart can, that Ford can. When you don't pay your
Yeah.
bills, you let the community know that, hey, here's some information. This person has not paid me.
Are you nationwide? Is there any difficulty working in a different state other than Texas or?
No, it's
is
all
universal?
nationwide. It's we can work in all 50 states.
Okay.
We actually had our first one from Alaska last week from Juneau.
Oh,
So,
nice.
yeah.
Nice. So you work with contractors. Obviously, Dog Walker isn't Contractor. What are some of the other businesses that you'll work with?
We work with a lot of used car dealerships is
Okay.
a big one. We have a lot of clients that have used car dealerships that do in-house financing. We work with, like I said, mainly in the construction industry, and I'm trying to think if there's any other interesting industries that we work in. I believe that's I would say it's close to 90% construction service based industry. right
Okay.
now.
Gotcha.
Right.
Very cool. Awesome.
How's your business? Is growing? You exponential? People finding out about you? You had people to service
Yeah,
everything?
it's going really really well. It's well, like I said, the only difficult part is that people don't know exactly. Like we have a lot of reviews and a lot of different data and statistics on our website and everything, but a lot of people just don't know how well the process is going to work. And so I think that's kind of a hesitation that a lot of people have is they don't know or they expect that it's going to get them paid. They're like, hey, if I give you $99, like you're going to collect this 18 grand for me, right? And it's
No.
I wish I could, but that's not a realistic thing. And
Yeah.
and it is a flat fee, which is completely different from most other collection type
Yeah.
services. Because an attorney's probably going to want a retainer up front too, plus a percentage of what they collect. And debt collectors, they operate as they get 30% of whatever they collect. But that game is if someone owes you $10,000, then you hand it over to a debt collector, and then they call the debtor and they say, hey, will you settle for $5,000? And they say,
Yeah.
sure, and they collect $1,500, and you're left with $3,500. So that's not. I mean, you're owed 10 grand, and now you have 3,500. That's better than nothing. But I mean, you could have done that too.
Sure.
I'm just giving them half off price. So
Yeah. That.
Do you find that people pull the trigger on the 31st day very often? 30 days past due, or are they in the night? I mean, what do you just
most
see
of the
people
time
do?
most of the time they're very reasonable. I mean, most contractors and business owners that I work with, give them plenty of time. I mean, this is not something that's an immediate thing that they're doing as soon as it's past due. It's something where they've called, they've gone over to their house, they've emailed, then they'll start threatening them a little bit, and normally it's quite a few months after it was due before they use our service.
Mm.
Yeah, and you said earlier that you have, how far
years.
back can you go? 2 years? Yeah, and that's a big contrast to liens because you missed the date and you've lost
Correct.
your
Yeah. I mean,
opportunity.
liens are state by
Yeah.
state. They can get really complicated, and with a lot of states, you have to
Right.
file it within 30 days of the construction in order for it to be valid, and then you have to update it every 6 months. I know that's how it is in Texas, and
Right.
you don't know whether or not you're going to get defaulted on, and you have to do all the pre-lien paperwork. You have to hand out the notices. You got to get them to sign every so often, and you do a lot of work, and it's like, hey, there's a 1% chance this person's not going to pay, and so you have to incorporate this whole other aspect of your business just to be in compliance with those liens.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the biggest way that people find you? What's your biggest source of new leads?
We do a lot of social media advertising. We do a lot on Facebook. We do a lot in different
Yeah.
groups, kind of things. We try to get on different electrical contractors, roofing contractors, groups, and just kind of get our message out that way. There's a lot of word of mouth right now. It's difficult because I come from the roofing restoration industry, in which you sell a roof. I mean, the profit on a roof can be $4,000 or $5,000. So if you spend $1,000 in sales and marketing, you're still making a lot of money. But this is such an interesting new concept for me, because when you're selling something for $99, like, your acquisition cost has to be low. You can't spend $500 in marketing to make $99, and then I still have to take my overhead and salaries and everything out of that too. So it's a very different concept. So it's something that's been a bit of a learning curve for me personally.
Yeah, I'm sure that's been a fun challenge to try to overcome though. And you also are looking at maybe the lifetime value of your contractors. Maybe they're going to file 10 claims in their lifetime. I don't know, maybe it's more than that, but and then hopefully you get one and they refer 3, something like that. So that's interesting. And then what is the process like, just being a contractor moving into more of a office job for you?
Yeah, I don't miss knocking doors for sure. I mean, we would, when those storms would come through, we would knock doors until, I mean, we would have like scars or like cuts on our knuckles from knocking so many doors. We
Yeah.
would knock 200 or 300 doors in a day, and so I don't miss that whatsoever. It's different, challenging. I miss kind of getting out in the field. I like being a contractor because it was kind of half of my day would be in the office, and then the other half I'd be going around looking at jobs, talking to clients, trying to sales, and that kind of thing. So the transition has been interesting, but I do like tech. I've always had a big interest in tech. I've always been good at it, and I've always leveraged tech with my businesses to become more efficient. And so this is different. I like the scaling aspect of it, to where you can have like a really big good company, but you might only have 5 or 6 employees, whereas you're a contractor, you'd have to have
Right.
dozens of employees. And so I really like that aspect of it, of having a smaller
That's great.
knit group people. And there's a lot of liability in contracting too, specifically roofing. There's accidents that happen, and it can get bad sometimes.
Yeah. Well, our mantra here for the cash flow contractor is less stress, more time, more money. And I think that the credit app is absolutely a tool that helps contractors, be able to achieve that. The stress that you feel from someone not paying and having, bills that you've got to pay in lieu of that, and you've got to float the money for them, and even just the relational stress that you deal with of, man, this person's not paying me, and I've got to be an asshole now to be able to get the money, and all those different things, or I've got to go and file the lien, and now I've got these attorney fees. There's so many different things that can cause you to lose your mind and have no time, no money, all those things necessarily. But it does give you another tool in your arsenal to be able to approach the problem differently. And so I think it's a huge benefit to contractors. I think everybody should at least check you out. And, maybe they're not dealing with that type of clientele that often, but it's good to have the tool in their back pocket whenever it does happen. So what is the best way for contractors to get in touch with you? Obviously, the creditapp.org, not .com, and we'll link to that in the show notes. So they should follow you on social.
The creditapp.org. If you want to reach out to us, our email, support@thecreditapp.org. I'm CC'd in all those emails, so if it's anything interesting pops up, I'll look at it personally. And yeah, that's really the two ways right there. You can chat us on our website. Our Facebook page, the Credit App Facebook page is one of those. And yeah, feel free to check out our service. And if you have any questions, reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, contractors talk to each other. So you're probably listening to this, and if you don't have a job right now or have one from the last 2 years that someone didn't pay you, even if it was just a couple $100, you probably know a contractor that is dealing with that. So share this episode with them, share the creditapp.org with them as a tool for help. Man, Doug, I really appreciate you being on. Thanks for helping our audience. And we'll be probably mentioning you to our clients and our audience from time to time. And
100%.
I love what you're doing. So thanks for sharing.
Absolutely. Good talk, guys.
Hey, Cashflow Contractors, thank you so much for checking in to this episode of the Cashflow Contractor. And I hope that the conversation with Doug was helpful, that it's given you a little bit of ideas of where you might be able to use the credit app, or even some of your peers in the industry can use it as well. Keep this tool in your arsenal, have it in your back pocket. Hopefully you don't run into a position where you have to use it, but more than likely it will come up at some point. So have it ready to use, and only $99 and you're ready to go with filing a dispute and hitting someone's credit for not paying you when they should have. So thecreditapp.org, go check it out in the show notes. Find them on social media, Facebook, as well as their website. And I hope that you found this helpful and that leads you to find less stress, more time, and more money in your business. Thanks for listening.